Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Deb. And thank you for inviting me to do this tonight. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to talk just a little bit about Drug House Odyssey. Drug House Odyssey is probably one of my favorite events, and it's been going on for 30 years, which is a huge, huge thing. There's not many events in Lee County that have gone on that long, especially with the pandemic, and we still came out of that. Um, and so with Drug House Odyssey, it really gives us an opportunity to get all the components that work in this field when it comes to prevention and when it comes to dealing with the consequences of underage drinking, whether it be police, fire, EMS, the state attorney's office, the public defender's office. We've got the jail, and then of course we have Lee Trauma, who unfortunately gets to see a lot of this. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to talk tonight about what really can happen. A, when the kids are drinking underage, and B, when parents decide to host a party. I know that there are parents who think, hey, if they're here drinking at the house and they're not driving, then it's okay. And it's not. One of the things that we're learning with social media is if you think you're having a party and inviting 10 people, the kids are putting it out and 50 are going to show up. And it's a lot bigger than you thought, and a lot of things can go on. And there's a lot of consequences for both the kids and the parents. And so that's one of the things that we want to talk about tonight. So I think tonight we're going to start off with Destiny Unsworth with the Lee County Sheriff's Office talking about hosting safe parties.
All right, great.
Destiny, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
There we go.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Does everything look good?
Yes.
All righty.
It looks
So
excellent. Thank you.
All right. My name is Destiny Unsworth. I'm a crime prevention practitioner with the Lee County Sheriff's Office. I cover the 1st and 6th precincts, formerly known as our North and Gulf districts. We just had a change in nomenclature the first of the year. So I'm going to be talking about hosting safe parties. As we've already said, a lot of parents are under the impression that when their kids are drinking at home with them, it's the better option, the safer option. But we know that it's not. So how do teens even get alcohol, right? We saw in a survey in 2019 that 7 million people aged 12 to 20 drank alcohol. Okay. Now, obviously, they're not able to get this themselves. So how are they getting it? A lot of us jump to fake IDs and the teens buying alcohol through stores that don't ID, but really they're getting it from an of-age adult, typically known to them. You'll also see here that 72% of underage teens that get alcohol don't even have to pay for it. Someone is literally giving it to them for free, right? Now, this is probably a parent or a friend's parent. It's on the shelf. Sometimes they don't know it's gone, right? So they're getting it and they're not even having to pay. So most underage alcohol consumption is stemming from what's called social hosting. The Parents Who Host Lose the Most campaign really emphasizes social hosting. And that is when an of-age adult is providing an underage person alcohol. Now, this is typically done at parties and large gatherings. So we have some stats here, okay? 2 out of every 5 teens says that they could easily obtain alcohol at a friend's house. So that may be out of your supervision as a parent, but ultimately, there's probably another parent home at that house or not aware of what's going on. Then we also have 2 out of 3 teens saying it would be easy to obtain alcohol at their own home without their parent ever knowing. You'll see here 1 out of 4 teens says their parent has provided alcohol to them. And 1 out of 4 teens have been to a party where underage partygoers drink in front of the parents that were present there. So even though you may not allow your child to drink at home in front of you, one of their friends' parents may be okay with that. We want to understand that social hosting is a crime. It totally undermines the parent-child relationship, and it harms them physically, mentally, and developmentally. So, can I serve alcohol to teens in my own home? This would be obvious to some people. We know it is illegal. But generally, hosting this is a misdemeanor. Laws do vary. And the host can even be held liable for things that happened when they weren't present. If a child is injured, maybe they get alcohol poisoning, something like that, you are held liable, which is a whole other set of worries, right? Because now you're involved in legal issues, which obviously we're going to touch on a little bit later. We do know that social host liability laws, essentially the laws that say it is not okay to serve underage teens alcohol, are effective in preventing underage drinking and driving, and heavy drinking. There's a lot of research that shows the younger you start drinking, the more problems you are, or I should say, the more likely you are to have problems with it later in life. There's also research that shows a large percentage of teens that are drinking underage turn into binge drinkers. So they're not even just casually drinking. It's becoming a problem really early on. Communities that with social host policies have smaller underage drinking parties. I mean, this is just common sense. When people feel that they're going to get in trouble, or people are going to know that they are providing alcohol to teens, they're going to be less likely to do it. So when it comes to hosting safe parties, we obviously don't want to provide alcohol to teens. We want to set expectations in regards to underage drinking. We want to have honest conversation about it. We don't want it to just end, don't drink, end of story. Because we all know that when you tell kids to not do things, they tend to want to do it more. So we want to explain, this is why we don't do this. This can happen, which is essentially what we're doing at Drug House Odyssey. If you've ever been to Drug House Odyssey, we're showing them your actions have consequences. And I think that the conversation needs to go in that direction instead of shielding the children from what can happen, because they need to know. We also want to be aware of our children's habits and friends, especially if they're going to be going to another friend's house. We want to talk to their parent. We want to know, are they going to be staying at the house the whole time? Do they plan on leaving to do something else? We also want to keep an eye on alcohol kept in the home, right? A lot of people have done that. They'll refill the bottles. Obviously, liquor doesn't freeze. Sometimes people have run into that. But we really do want to keep an eye on alcohol kept in the home, because so many people keep bottles of stuff that they'll never drink. It's sat on the shelf for 3 years and they don't realize it's gone. We also want to work with other parents. If you're noticing that a child has drank alcohol, or you are aware of other parents who are providing alcohol to minors, we do want to share that information and ask questions. If your kids are saying they're going to a party, they're going to a friend's house, ask them what they're doing. Ask them who's going to be there. Will a parent be home? And try to provide alternate activities. So Younger kids or kids without cars are limited on what they can do. Obviously, children typically don't have a lot of money to do things. So try and provide them with an activity that would deter them from drinking anyway, something they would rather do. And then ultimately, parents who host lose the most. You're putting the most on the line liability wise for other people's children. You're really harming their health physically and mentally. And there's really just no benefit whatsoever to hosting parties with alcohol. So that's kind of it there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Destiny. That's some really great information. I really appreciate that presentation.
You're welcome.
Next up, we're going to hear from Officer Yvette Dominique from the Fort Myers Police Department, and she's going to talk about talking to your kids about underage drinking.
Hi, I'm sorry. One moment. I'm having difficulties with my phone.
It's all
Okay.
good.
All right, here we go. Hi, how's everybody?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So I'll introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Officer Dominique. I'm with the Fort Myers Police Department. I have been an officer for 17 years. 12 of those 17 years, I work with youth very closely in our youth relations unit. I've also created and facilitate two programs. One is a prevention program, which is Young Leos, and another program is a recidivism program, which is called Trust. I am CIT certified, which is a crisis intervention training. I am trained in restorative circles, meaning the reason I say all of this is because I work with kids a lot. I have kids that come to me all the time and they want to talk to me. And one of the things they all talk to me about is that they're unable to have conversations with their parents. And one of the reasons they feel like they don't want to talk to their parents is parents judge. So one of the things I try to talk to parents about, and when they're having conversations with their kids, is you have to be you can't be judgmental when talking with your kids. I would talk to them openly. You need to be honest. I feel like when we are honest with our kids, they respect it more. A lot of time we try to go around the subject as parents because we're afraid of introducing things to our kids. But like the young lady was saying earlier, they're going to get this information from someone else. They're going to get the alcohol from someone else. Don't sit down and have a conversation with them. They're going to get that information and that alcohol from someone else. And I would rather be the person they talk to, and I can basically explain to them what the reasons for not doing them. We don't want to tell kids no, like the young lady says, because if you say no, it kind of triggers that I need to know why. I need to understand why you're saying no. You know what I mean?
I do.
So so that's why we don't want to use the word don't drink. I'm old school. My father was very different. My father was the type of guy, hey, let's sit down. We're gonna if this is something your friends are doing, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have this drink. And I remember my father making me drink a whole bottle with him one time. And I was so sick. And I'm like, and as an adult now, I'm like, that is really crazy, but that was
exactly. We do not do that now.
exactly.
Right?
That was his train of thought. That's what he felt. Okay, this is what I need to do to teach my child. But what I've learned that if you just have real conversations with kids and you let them know, hey, this is not what I want you to do because this is what happens. You can go on YouTube, you can go on, there are videos out there. Drug House Odyssey is a very great program that teaches kids what can happen if you do drink. Most people, as a law enforcement officer being out on the road, you see a lot of young people that either snuck out or they're getting in cars with other people who are drinking.
Mhm.
That's the other thing. Have those conversations. You don't get into a vehicle with someone who has been drinking. You don't, if you go to a party and you've noticed someone is drinking at the party, please give me a call right away. You know, call me. You have to be at a point where your kids are so comfortable at calling you when they see danger, possible danger. And what that means is you can't be judgmental. You have to be able to be that parent that's understanding enough to say, hey, I want you to come to me. Because again, I am one of those that I used to be before dealing with youth. I used to be the one that says, you better not. And if I catch you, I'm going to, and you better not have somebody come back and tell me. That was me. But since working with youth, I realized that's not the conversation I want to have with them. That's not the way you want to do it. I'm not saying be their friend. I'm saying be their parent by telling them, hey, alcohol is not for you. You're not fully developed to be able to deal with those, to make those decisions. So you're 18, 15, 17, 14, 13, your mind is not fully developed. You can't make those decisions. So it's okay to tell your kids, I drink, but, I drink responsibly and I'm old enough. You can't follow what I do. Parents who drink socially, and they think it's okay. But again, having a conversation, and this is the reason why. You
Absolutely.
understand?
I do. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Kids will emulate their parents.
They do.
And if they see you being responsible, they will do the same thing.
Exactly.
And so, yes, having those open and honest conversations about consequences, about what really can happen. Having also worked in law enforcement, I understand, I've seen the consequences. I've seen those car crashes. I've talked to parents. I've had to tell parents that their child has died. You don't want to do that.
One of the things that I've also noticed, and just like I said, when talking with the kids, a lot of times they said, I wish my parents would have had that conversation with me. I wish they would have talked to me. I wish someone would have said, this is what could happen. I know that we think that our kids don't listen. They do. They really do listen. You may not, they may, retaliate, walk away. But I promise you, when you're having these conversations, they're hearing it. Because when I talk to these kids, they all repeat what their parents said. And I'm telling you, they are listening. So have it, regardless if you feel like they're not listening, they are. Okay, they are. And most kids that I have come in contact with, especially ones that are getting into trouble, that have been, conversations with them, they always said, I wish my parents would have said that this was a big deal. I didn't really think that this could happen to me. And that's what I hear from every one of my teens. So let's not have your teen be that person. Just have the conversation. It's hard, but I'd rather have that hard conversation now than to have that hard conversation when it happens.
Exactly. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for us tonight.
I appreciate you. Thank you guys for having me. Again, parents, you guys rock. It's hard out there nowadays, but again, just keep strong, be there. And Drug House Odyssey is amazing. I went to my first Drug House Odyssey this year, and I am upset with myself that I didn't go before, and it is amazing. So
It's a great
kudos.
event. And one of the things I
Yeah.
love about Drug House Odyssey is that they're in 5th grade. They're still
Yes.
asking questions. They're still
Yes.
wanting to learn. So
Mhm.
it's really a good age to have these conversations because
Yes,
they
I
do.
do.
It's so visual that it really has an effect.
Yeah.
So yes, Drug House Odyssey is something I'm very, very proud of, and we will continue to do.
Great job, guys. And unfortunately, I do have to go. I have another meeting to go to, but thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule tonight. We really do appreciate it.
Right, you guys have a great night.
Thank you. You too. And from the other side, the other perspective, we're going to talk with Paul Poland with the state attorney's office to talk about the penalties, because there are consequences for underage drinking.
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah, how's my volume? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah. First of all, my name is Paul Poland. I'm a deputy chief. I've been a prosecutor for now 31 years. So I've done a little bit of everything, including delinquency, and adult crimes and felonies, misdemeanors. So, like a lot of the people who are on here, I've seen it all over the years. And I also have been involved in Drug House Odyssey for
Many years.
20 years, maybe. But and it's a good program. One of the things I'm going to start with, and I'll get into the idea of, what happens if you find yourself, getting arrested or cited for this kind of thing. But one of the things we do at Drug House Odyssey is we try to talk about some of the consequences that you really wouldn't necessarily consider that go along with getting in trouble with the law. For example, one of the things we talk about is we set up the scenario where somebody comes before the court and they're being sentenced on an alcohol offense. And, one of the warnings I used to give them as a judge would be, you don't understand how this might follow you in your life. If we did a scenario where somebody had a scholarship and we said, well, that might affect your scholarship to go to college. And kids don't necessarily think of that. The other thing we talk about is, you might want to become some sort of professional that requires a license, like an engineer, doctor, or something like that. Arrest records matter, and those kind of things could hold up or sometimes even prevent you from getting the kind of professional license that you might want to have. So getting in trouble with the law can have long-term effect. And then the one thing we always hit on, and I'll hit on this throughout my presentation, is, what do a lot of young people think about? They want to drive. And a lot of these offenses that I'm going to talk about, one of the penalties that goes along with this is the suspension of the right to drive or delaying the ability to get a license based on the offense. So there's a lot of consequences just between in addition to what we think is the common, punishment things, fines, jails, that kind of thing. But one of the things I'll start with, and the first presenter did a really good job talking about parents and providing alcohol. There is a statute in the state of Florida. It's 856-015. It's called Open House Party. And it's not just something that we talk about. It's something we actually see. And that's a simple statute that says if a person provides 18 years old or older, provides alcohol to a minor in a setting like was described earlier, that is a crime. And we've had parents actually get arrested, and that is a second-degree misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to 2 months and 60 days in jail and $500 fine. So there are real consequences. The basic offense that you might see is if you come into the court system would be possession by a person under 21. So we're not just talking about minors, people under 18, juveniles, although that's, I think, a big emphasis of today's talk. But it's under 21. It's a second-degree misdemeanor, once again, to possess alcohol if you're under 21. You could go up to jail for up to 60 days and a $500 fine. I'll be real about that. That's not the most common result. We do use diversion programs sometimes for first-time offenders, but there's real consequences there. And those consequences can be things such as community service, requiring to go to a drug, get evaluation and attend some sort of counseling. Once again, suspension of licenses, all those kind of things. So regardless of how it's handled, whether it's handled in front of the judge and prosecuted as a crime or goes the diversion route, there's no easy way out of this. So that's important to think about. And there's a couple other laws I just want to bring up, and that is there's a law under Florida Statute 562.11 that makes it a crime, a second-degree misdemeanor, for a person to give like a licensee to provide alcohol to a minor. It's like like the clerk at a 7-Eleven or something like that. So and then it's also a second-degree misdemeanor, tongue-tied. It's a second-degree misdemeanor for a person to misrepresent their age to induce a licensee to to provide them alcohol. So it's not just the possession. It could be how you obtain it if you're trying to, con the clerk or something like that. And then there's a couple other statutes I want to mention because this I thought was brought up earlier about in that first presentation about fake IDs. In the state of Florida, it's actually a third-degree felony to alter your driver's license, and that's a felony. And just to give you an idea what that means, that's a crime that a person who's an adult can go to state prison for up to 5 years and have a $5,000 fine. Whether or not that's realistic and that would happen, it's out there. And a person with a prior record, that might actually, something like that could happen. If you alter your license to just change the birth date, once again, that's a lesser crime, but it's still a misdemeanor crime. And so a lot of people, go that route, try to get the fake ID. And it's not against the law for the clerk to identify a fake ID and just say, nope, you're not getting it back. And then there's your picture for the whole world to see. And it's not hard to track you down after that. And then the last thing I guess I'll touch on is it goes back to the driving, and we have zero tolerance laws in the state of Florida. And that means a person who's under 21 years of age, they're not allowed to have any alcohol and drive. But the law says that if they have a breath alcohol level of 0.02 or above, that's a crime, and you can get a 6 months suspension of your driver's license, or a year if it's a second one. If you refuse to take, you can't get out of it by refusing to take the breath test, because then there's an automatic 1 year refusal suspension, or 18 months if it's a second. So an officer pulls you over, he or she doesn't have to think, oh, well, this person's impaired. They can, if you're under 21, they can simply be of the impression that you have been drinking, and then you can get in trouble for that. So there's a lot of consequences that can happen. And one of the things I always like to tell people is one of the most unintended consequences is people, they take a chance driving. But if you happen to be one of those unlucky persons that gets in a traffic accident and you seriously injure somebody or kill somebody, you're going to go to prison. And if you're a juvenile, there's something in the juvenile system we call a drag file. And that's when a person before they reach 18 is treated as an adult. And it's more than likely, if you are involved in some sort of DUI manslaughter or something like that, and you're 16, 17 years old, you're probably going to get drag filed. And then you're going to be 16 or 17 years old, and you're going to be looking at going to state prison, and probably for a long time. And that's for that person who just thought, oh, I've only had a few, I'm just going from here to there. But that one mistake not only costs somebody their life, which is the most important thing, but it can also cost you your entire future. So everything I've talked about, I've seen. Unfortunately, I've seen juveniles, be in serious accidents, thinking, oh, I'm just doing this or that, and so there's a lot of consequences in the court system, and there's a lot of ways we handle those cases. But the one thing we never do, and that is not address it. We will address it, and we take it very seriously.
Correct. I think one of the things that especially dealing with teenagers, is they think that nothing bad can happen. So I'm going to go from here to there, but it won't matter. But it does matter. And like you said, there's real world consequences. And like, even if it's not a DUI crash, but it's just a DUI arrest, it can affect college. It can affect trade schools. It can affect your career. So there's lasting consequences that kids just don't think about. And even for parents, if you're going to host a party, do you really want your neighbors seeing you getting arrested? Probably not. And so there's a lot to take in, but thank you very much for all of that information. I think it gives parents, knowledge, and knowledge is always power. And the better equipped they are to have the conversations with their kids, that there really are consequences to this. And everything that happens at Drug House Odyssey, we have all seen. It is absolutely happens. Unfortunately, it happens more often than not. And so it gets us to show kids how it can happen, but we know how it does happen. Is there any questions? Is there anything that anybody else would like to talk about tonight?
I've unmuted everyone, so if you've got a question, you can speak up or put it in the chat box.
Let's see here. I'm not seeing a whole lot.
I think we're good.
Well, I want to thank everybody that took time tonight to be here. We really appreciate your time, your expertise, and everything that you do for the coalition. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks to
Goodbye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.